a boutique coaching company. We believe that it's important to come alongside. So we, only carry the amount of clients that we can hold in our hands to come on site every 90 days. We truly have a passion of building and developing the teams so that it's not just the doctor doing everything. Like our tagline is build a team so strong you don't know who the boss is. So this
I
is
love that.
so right.
Love that.
So I want to be able to, we want to be able to empower the doctors to empower their office managers and the leadership on the team, and then in turn to level up and lead the team. And that really starts with finding the ideal team players and bringing the right people into the team in the first place. And that's really what we're here to talk about today is how do you identify the right type of person that you want, how to get them, and then keep them. So Tiffany, go ahead and start us off.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I'm really excited to spend some time talking about it. I feel it's one of the most important parts of building that strong team that we talk about is hiring well. And I think that a lot of us get stuck in hiring problems are simply about finding the right person. But what we see over and over again in our coaching is that hiring challenges often start with the process itself, not necessarily the candidates. And the truth is, the way that we hire really sets the tone for what happens after they start. So I am going to share my screen with you. Bear with me while I get it up. Okay, can you see that okay?
Yes.
Perfect. So before we dive into the hiring process itself, it helps to have an understanding of what the reality in the workforce is today. And there's a lot of studies out there. There's some really great, we go through Gallup and Dental Post has some really great statistics out there. But what we see is that employee turnover is expensive and disruptive. This is nothing new. We know this. Replacing a team member can cost anywhere from 50 to 200% of their annual salary when you factor in recruiting and training costs, loss of productivity, and team disruption. And research shows that 20% of employees will leave within the first 45 days of employment. They're not even making it all the way through to the full 90 days. Even more interesting, I found that only about 12% of employees strongly feel that onboarding is done well. But when practices implement strong onboarding programs, retention can improve up to 82%. So what does this tell us? What we see is that hiring and onboarding aren't necessarily two separate processes. They're one continuous experience, and it starts with hiring well. So we're going to start with a quick poll, and Marlene is going to be my poll helper. We kind of want to know a little bit more about where you guys are coming from. So you tell us who is primarily in charge of your hiring process? The doctor, manager, sometimes it's a mix.
If y'all would take a moment and click
Like
on
they're
that.
starting to come through.
Yep. We'll give it another, what, 10, 15 seconds here. If you guys would click on that. We still got, all right, we've got 54% of attendees here. I don't know if it's also counting our note taker or not.
It might, yeah, it probably is counting note takers and us as
Right.
well. And
Okay.
this is typically kind of what you can post the poll. I think that
Yeah.
that's pretty
So
much.
if you want to end poll, Marlena, and post, share results.
So this is kind of what we see. We see it's either heavily on the office manager or shared between the two, but it's not necessarily clear on between the two, the doctor and the manager, who's doing what and when, right? Thank you for that poll. So oftentimes it becomes a reactive process. We see somebody leave and then there's an immediate need to fill a position, which is exactly why having a clear process of who does what and when before that need comes up is so important. Oops, I need to get rid of this poll. Okay. So the first step that we like to see when hiring well actually happens before you even post a job ad. It actually starts with clarity. Oftentimes practices hire because there's an empty chair. We feel the urgency to fill that seat. And like Kim was saying earlier, we just need a warm body at this point. Can you breathe? Can you walk? Can you type? Great. We're going to put you in that role. So instead of asking who can fill the seat and when, better questions to start with really become, what does success in this role actually look like? And for admins especially, what does this seat actually do? Oftentimes we'll see job ads that say front desk help wanted. We're not hiring furniture, we're hiring people. What are they going to do? Give them a title. And if we don't have those titles separated in the administrative team, let's get clear on who does what and when and how that looks. So we want to think about what tasks and outcomes should this position achieve? What kind of personality thrives on your team? What qualities truly matter in your practice culture? And what would we really want to have versus what we already have on our team, right? So one of the biggest lessons that we've learned working with dental practices is that you can train the systems, you can train the software, but you can't necessarily train on character and emotional intelligence. Those are things that can be learned over a time, but accountability and all of those things are much harder to teach. So when you hire for values and mindset up front, you set the stage for long-term success in that hire. So another poll, real quick. You tell us, what's your biggest challenge that you've had so far in hiring? Job ad, not enough applicants. Yeah.
Oh, we got a little more participation on this one.
Yeah, no, I
Ooh.
like this. This is great.
All right.
So
Okay.
I think that you can go ahead and share those results. So it's interesting. There's a few things that I look at this, not enough qualified applicants, and then choosing between applicants. There's a lot of really good tools that you can put into that. But what we see is that many hiring challenges actually happens before the interview stage. And that kind of plays in a little bit into qualified applicants. Do we know what we're looking for in order to find a qualified applicant? Have we really spelled that out for ourselves, or are we just looking at really poorly written resumes and don't know who to choose at it, which we'll get to in a minute. So I'm going to stop sharing that. Oops. Did you guys get to see those results?
Did you share those results, Marlena?
Okay,
Okay.
perfect. I just keep getting the little pop-ups on my window. So, all right. So talking about the job ad itself, this is kind of thinking upstream on those qualified candidates that we're looking for. Oftentimes in dentistry, they kind of look similar. Usually it will list duties, hours, maybe some requirements, and often gets reused over and over again and not updated. And sometimes they're even simply a copy of our job description pasted right into Indeed. But the job post itself is actually your first opportunity to start to communicate your culture. And it's really important to understand the difference between the two. So let me clarify. A job posting is written for candidates. It's concise, it's quick, it's easy to read, literally scannable, almost thinking like social media a little bit. It's an introduction to the practice, who we are, a brief introduction to expectations of the role, not the job description, not all of the details yet, but what will they primarily be doing? And then growth opportunities. Why should they choose your practice to work for? This is our opportunity to really kind of sell ourselves and our team and our culture. So candidates should begin to understand not only what the role is, but what it's like to work for your practice. And then a job description, that's more of an internal document. That's provided to a new hire during orientation that outlines all of the details and fine items and responsibilities and expectations to do that job well. Not to do right away, but to eventually do that job really well. And so they serve different purposes. The job description should not simply be pasted into the job ad, which gets difficult because we see on Indeed job description. Great, we want to describe the job and who we are and everything there, but it doesn't mean post your job description here. So when you write a thoughtful job post, you begin to attract candidates who align with your culture instead of simply hiring another or simply applying to another dental job. And you'll start to see an uptick of more qualified applicants because they're actually applying what their skills are to what you're saying the skills that you're looking for, right? And then once they do apply, which I hire across the country in all states, across all time zones, and it's really interesting to do demographic searches on how often people apply and what they apply for, whether they're skilled for that or not. And so, yes, you have to do a lot of sifting through those resumes, but the interview becomes your opportunity to learn more about what's on their resume. Real quick touch on resumes. They're often full of information. Some are overwritten, poorly formatted. Some contain small spelling errors. And yes, you want to weed out the obvious misfits, but you also want to keep in mind to be a little open-minded that a lot of the workforce today were never taught how to write a resume, and they're using templates within Indeed or Canva or whatever it may be. So be open-minded, and instead of looking for perfect resumes, which sometimes you get and it's still not a good candidate, I'll put that out there, try reading between the lines and looking for potential for growth. We like to pay attention to how a candidate communicates before the interview, how they respond to scheduling, how professional are their messages. And then during the interview, we focus less on interrogation and more on exploration. We really want to understand more than just the experiences listed and the work experience listed on the resume. We want to see how do they think? How do they speak and communicate with their answers? Are they clear and concise? Can they answer a direct question that is speaking to something specific versus generalized? And then how have they handled challenges in the past? You even ask questions on, if I were to ask one of your previous employees what you needed to work on, what would they say? That gives them self-reflection on, well, what is it that I need to work on, and being honest and true to that. So again, skills can be trained, but how someone shows up on a team is far more predictive for long-term success. And so we kind of look for personality traits in those interviews as well. Another step that often gets skipped, just a real touch base on, is the reference checking. It's a process, but doesn't have to be. It can be quick and simple, but you'd be surprised that even a super quick conversation with a previous employer or coworker can provide valuable insight into reliability, communication style, how someone handles responsibility and accountability. So reference checks simply help you confirm what it is that you're seeing in the interview process and can protect your culture that you've built before making a blind hire. If you decide to do background checks, it's important to conduct them consistently for all the roles. So that one's subjective. It's up to you. We do recommend it. You can also
Tiffany, can I second that for a
yes.
second? Because I got to tell you, the number of practices who they ask for references but never check them
Yep.
is astronomical. And I've had a couple practices. I just said, please, before you take the next step, could you just call the references?
Mm-hmm.
And they did. And they called me back like, oh my God, you won't believe what I discovered.
Yeah.
So, Aim, you've got, I will say it on your behalf.
Thank
You
you.
should ask for references and call them.
Call them. And again, I hire for all of the states across the board. And so sometimes they aren't going to answer an out of state phone. So we've developed a way to, we send them a form through email because doctors are checking, they can't take calls throughout the day, and we're not on the same time zone. So people do respond to an email with a form. Please answer this question. This is what we're looking for. Can you provide feedback? We get a lot of feedback that way. That's not a wrong way to do it. Yes, a phone call is great because I can hear tone. I can ask more in-depth questions, but doctors are hard to get a hold of and on the different time zones. So don't hesitate to make it an email. If you or yourself are a doctor trying to check references, you don't have time to send an email. They'll respond. Yes, references are
100%.
yeah,
Yep.
And
absolutely.
I just on the flip side for the doctors and office managers on the call, when you are asked for a reference check and it is someone that you absolutely have nothing positive to say and would not hire them, one way to avoid getting yourself in trouble is to simply respond with, they did not sign a reference sheet. I cannot give a reference on their behalf until they sign something. So if you ask them to sign a reference request form, then I can provide you information. So most people can read between the lines of like, it keeps you safe, and then you don't have to say it.
Right.
No,
Yeah.
that's
More jokingly, one of my consultant friends says, my attorney has advised me that I cannot answer any questions. So,
I get, I'm unable to provide feedback at this time, or the simple
right.
answers that I get, and
Right.
that's like between the lines of, okay, heard.
Yeah.
I hear you. Thank you for letting me know.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for that validation on the reference checks. I appreciate that. So
Yeah.
another quick poll. How do you typically welcome new hires in? So we've been through the hiring process. We found the candidate that we want to, hire. What is your structure? What do you typically do? Do you have a structured first day? Do you introduce them to the team when they start and then just shadow this person and learn as you go, throw them in, hope they swim?
All right. I think we got a couple people who have joined us, maybe got disconnected. So hopefully, let's go. Let's get to 7. Come on. One more. Come on, people. We can do it. All right. Might be the rest is note takers. Right. All right. And did you share? Yeah. Okay. You're sharing. Cool.
Perfect. Okay. So this is, I mean, it's pretty much straight across the board. Sometimes we have a plan. Sometimes it depends on how busy we are. It depends on the schedule that week. It depends on who's in, but we really want this person to start so they can get started in training. And so this is exactly why the next step is so important, because if you don't have a plan, really it's subject to fail. Talking, kind of switching back to that first week really sets the tone for all of the things to be successful. You've gone through the long process of selecting the right candidate, right? Which can be daunting. We often see that the offer is made, the offer is accepted, and then all communication goes silent. So waiting for that start date to arrive, and then the process isn't finished, and it's simply transitioning. Let me back up a little bit. So waiting for the start date to arrive and not having any communication with the new hire until now they're here. There's a big disconnect and nerves that happen in between that. So we really want to be sure that transitioning into the next stage is successful. And it matters a lot more than a lot of practices realize, I feel. So the first thing before we get too far into it, when you're making the offer and you're trying to select a start date, we highly recommend avoiding starting a new hire immediately after vacation on a Monday, on the busiest day of your week. I know that we oftentimes say, well, we need to start them as soon as they're available to start so that we can get things started and going and training, but really be mindful of what their first 3 to 5 days within the practice is going to look like, not only with your schedule, but with your team. So choose a calmer day so that the team can really give them the attention they need and integrating them into the practice.
Tiffany, if I
Yeah.
can ask or kind of partially comment. So Jerry Gottlieb, your founder, I've seen her present this, and she's mentioned, and I don't know where you all are on in regards to this. When you onboard a new employee, is for them not to see patients for a certain number of days and get a feel for the practice. Are you all still
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
So not only for HIPAA purposes, you want to check, do they have all of their HIPAA things in order on
Right.
day one? Probably not. Maybe. It depends on their experience. So there's that part of it. And then, they need to orient themselves into the practice before they start seeing patients, right?
Okay.
So yes, and then I'll get to that.
Okay.
A lot of strong practices will prepare by communicating clearly after the offer and creating excitement with the team. I think that's part of it, right? We really want the team to be excited and planning a structure for that first day. So a welcome packet to the new hire that has all of the documents. This can be digital or physical or both. Some people will send a digital shared drive with all of the legal paperwork that they need to have filled out to start working. And then they'll have a welcome folder with a letter from the doctor, things that they need to know within the practice in order to be successful for that. And then we also really like to assign a team buddy, someone who can give the new hire a place to go if they have any questions of where things are, how systems work. If you think orientation, it is how are we orienting this new hire into the practice physically and to feel like they're part of the team. Where do things live? Where do I go for this? They don't know the lay of the land. So giving them a buddy that really is an advocate for the practice that can really speak nicely to the things that are happening there, right? Because a lot of times if you have turnover, there's usually a deeper reason for it. So you really want it to be an advocate for the practice. And it's just for those first couple of days and, into the first 30 days, maybe having a buddy, but somebody that they can go to with simple, basic questions about the practice. Where do I find this? I need to do this. How does this typically work? How have you done it in the past so that I can be sure that I'm beginning to be part of the team and in alignment with how the practice works? So yes, absolutely. That first week really sets the tone on how supported and confident someone feels walking around the practice and finally beginning to feel like they're going to be part of a team. And it really is the moment where hiring transitions into the onboarding process. Everything that we've talked to up to this point really has been about defining the role, attracting the right candidates, interviewing well, and creating a strong first week after the offer is made. So that's what gets that's what gets somebody into the door, into your practice. That empty seat is officially filled. Now, what do we do with them, right? What happens next in those first 90 days is really what determines whether they stay in that seat and continue to grow with your team, or if they begin to disengage because they aren't given the tools up front to be successful in that role. So I have a final poll for you real quick. We'd like to know, share with us, what do you currently do for your 90-day onboarding plan? If you have one, do you have one? Sometimes.
All right, somewhat. Okay,
Yeah,
we got some
I love, yeah,
informals.
clear plan. That's great. Hopefully it's working. Somewhat, but informal. Perfect.
Cool.
And this is where
Uh,
Kim gets to take you through what the 90-day onboarding process looks like.
Great.
Stop sharing.
Yeah. It's like most of us somewhat, but it's informal. When I was working in a practice, I know that I was guilty of this. We would find a great candidate. We'd be super excited. We'd bring them in. And it's like, as soon as they came into the office, then it became, now you prove to us that you belong here and can stay here, versus how do we make everything about the excitement? How do we provide every piece of training, give all of the tools necessary? So by the end of that 90 days, it's called the orientation and training period, because you've got 90 days to decide, are they the fit? But did I give them every opportunity to show me that they're the fit? So how do we legally protect ourselves during those first 90 days to say, yes, we did, and they become an employee, or we gave everything and they just aren't up to our standards and they're not going to be becoming an employee? We're going to share with you after, so Marlena will send this out, a sample first 90 days of onboarding. So like Andra said, when you're first coming in, that first week or two might be shadowing, learning your roles. We really like to follow the like Four Seasons, Ritz-Carlton, thinking you're not going to be hired onto one of those properties and immediately start serving guests. You're going to have a full training period. Well, we're in small private practices. We don't have the capabilities to send someone to a 2 week or a 30-day training. So we have to do it in-house. But how do we make sure that we're really setting our teams up for success? One other thing, prior to bringing that new employee on, when you're taking the pieces that we talk about today and formulating your own structured first 90 days, this is a great team meeting topic to sit your team down and say, I want you to think back to your first 90 days in this practice, your first 90 days in your last practice. Everybody was new at some point. What were things that we did that were really helpful? And what would have been helpful? What were you missing that we didn't do? So one, we're getting things taken care of, and two, it helps them give a little grace to the new employee, because it's easy to be annoyed when someone's asking you a lot of questions. It's easy to be like, oh, I'm so tired of training. But when we force the team to remember, like, when you were new, what would have been helpful? So that's a great team meeting. Take the first 90 days sample that we're going to give you, ask your team, and then start building it out. Um, you're welcome to turn your cameras on and be interactive. And I say, like, raise of hands if you have somebody on your team that's a good trainer. I think that's one of the areas that is hard in dentistry as well. Nobody was trained on how to train upcoming employees. So we get somebody and then we throw them into the fire and say, great, how are we going? Once you have your new employee hired, you're going to start with weekly check-ins. And by check-ins, I mean a 10-minute check-in every single week. If you have an office manager, it can be the office manager. It can be you as the doctor. It can be the clinical lead if it's a clinical person. But somebody is sitting down for 10 minutes every week to say, here are the things that we worked on this week. How are we doing? How is it going? You're checking in with other employees to say, like, have they mastered these two things that we wanted them to master this week? And here's the plan for next week. So I will send this to you also, but just for an example of a training checklist. So this is something that is for an assistant. You know what? I'm sorry. I don't have access to share. It's fine.
You don't
Marlene's
have?
gonna,
You don't have it?
Well, it could be that I don't have access or that I'm not technically, um, I'm technically challenged here, Andres.
Okay.
But just having a week by week training checklist to say, week one, we're going to work on these two things. Week two, we're going to work on these three things. And then whoever is having those weekly check-ins, you're marking it off and dating it to say, yes, they are now proficient in this piece. The next thing you're going to do is schedule their 30-day, 60-day, 90-day formal sit-down performance reviews. So this is where, while every state but Montana is an at-will state, meaning I can fire you at any point in time for any reason. You can quit for any reason. That's not technically true. It is very hard to fire somebody without written documentation of why we're letting them go, and it really needs to be performance based or that they are out of alignment with our vision, core values, and those pieces. So these 30, 60, 90-day written performance reviews is going to be your legal documentation of, over these 30 days, here are the things that we have trained you on. Here is your competency level. Here is where we need you to improve, what's going well, what's not going well, and then what we're going to be working on over the next 30 days. And so every 30 days, you're sitting down. So by the end of that 90 days, it should be no surprise whether this person is not really going to be a fit or they are well on their way to being an amazing employee for you. We also coach, it used to be you'd sit down and do one performance review once a year with all the team members. And I don't know about any of you, but it typically turned into, we're trying to talk about a performance issue that happened last June. Okay, well, nobody really remembers what happens. And the employee is just sitting there waiting for their turn to speak so they can ask what kind of raise they're getting or tell you that they want a raise. And it really becomes more about money and less about performance reviews. So we like to coach, as you've hired this employee, we're doing the 30, 60, 90 days. And from that 90-day new employee review, it immediately goes into, now we're having a quarterly review. So 90 days from then, 90 days from then, 90 days from then. And if you do that with each employee and it's tied to their start date, there's never a time when you're having to do, 10, 12, 20 performance reviews all at one time. So if you set it up quarterly, now you've got 3 quarterly reviews going into a once a year overall performance review, and that can be tied to compensation benefit review. So, our recommendation is once a year, you're looking at everyone's compensation, everyone's benefits. Is there anything that we are going to be changing, anything we want to do, and you've got documentation leading up to that. So you're coming to the table to either say, it is not time for a raise at this time because based on A, B, and C, and we're going to be monitoring these KPIs and setting these goals going forward, or you're really going above and beyond and look how much you've learned in this year, and we want to reward you with different compensation. So that is really what we're teaching now, is having more often performance reviews, and it helps with team engagement as well. When we are working with a team and training their office managers, we also love having, I talked about, we were going to first have a 10-minute weekly check-in, especially if you have a team of, 12 or less people. That weekly check-in should continue. How great is it if you could check in for 10 minutes every week with every employee, whether it's you as the owner? I know that is a lot when you're also the provider. So ideally it's your office manager. But then, and we call it upstream. So if I'm meeting with, Tiffany every week for 10 minutes and I'm being intentional, I'm not just asking, how are the kids? How was your trip? How's Montana? All important things. But during this 10-minute check-in, I really want to know, what are the things that you're working on? Where do you need support from me? What are the things that I could be doing to make your job and life here at the practice easier? Are there things that you would like to start learning, start doing that we're not tapping into right now? And you are not using this as, it doesn't have to be formal documentation. I'd keep notes so I'd remember what I was going to be talking about. But those weekly check-ins, you're going to start pinpointing if there's an issue before the issue actually becomes a big problem. So all of this just helps employee retention. It helps with employee engagement. And that's building up to great. Now, by the time I get to my next quarterly review, I have, 3 months worth of weekly check-ins or every other week check-ins to really help build my case. And when you set this up in practice, it starts making it much easier than trying to say, do we give anybody a raise? Is it a cost of living? That was always a big stressor to me when somebody would ask for a raise, and I really had no idea if they should get one or not. So I'd put it off. And then, 3 months later, so it was just a constant, that's how I learned to be an office manager. I don't know. I didn't know how to look at a P&L. I didn't know how to see if we were profitable. I didn't know how to tie metrics to performance reviews. So that is, a passion of ours, is to make sure that our team's leadership is well equipped to decide what are things looking like. But it's really that training piece and the engagement piece, so that we're working on our culture, our soft skills side, as well as our technical and task side. So Tiffany had talked about, that first week of onboarding when you are going through paperwork and all of that. One of the most important tools that you can have is working with a company for a professional HR manual. So we are partnered with Bent Erickson. Growing up leading practices without knowing the HR rules and laws, I didn't know that we had state and federal laws that we had to follow. I worked for a doctor who believed that no rules applied to him. We're a small company. We could do as we please. So when I met Ben Erickson and realized what they did, and I was like, oh, this is the best tool I've ever been given as a manager. So we have a training book of this is how we do things here. Now we have an HR manual to say this is how we behave here. And you tie the two together, and it makes every sit down with an employee much easier to go over things versus like having a hard conversation. So we, if we're working with a client, you're required to have either Bent Erickson, Cedar, HR for Health, somebody who's going to, have a professionally supported manual. So that is also part of your onboarding pieces. So if you don't already have HR paperwork lined up, when you are hiring somebody, an employment agreement. So I don't know if this has ever happened to you before, but I am going to hire somebody, and I am thinking that I'm very clear on what their wages will be, their start date, the time they show up at the office, are they a full-time employee, all of those things. And then, they're late on their first day. Well, they thought they were supposed to come at the huddle at 7. Well, I thought, no, you come at 6:45 because the huddle's at 7. Oh, I thought I was going to be, making this amount of money. No, I hired you at this. So having a really great employment agreement with everything written out, and you cannot be clear enough. We say if you can't explain it to a fifth grader, if a fifth grader can't repeat it back to you, then it's not clear enough. So how do we simplify things, and how do we have it written out so that you always have a really strong log to go back to? So that a year from now, 2 years from now, you have a trail of every conversation you've had around benefits, compensation. When do they get a raise? When do they not get a raise? Because I see that often is miscommunication leading up to the hiring process. Tiffany also had the poll of hard to find the right candidates. Sometimes it's hard to find the right candidates because we can't necessarily afford to compete with the larger practices or the DSOs. So people that are qualified and great asking for higher wages than what we can comfortably give. So one of the important pieces when you are interviewing is asking, like, what is the most important things besides a paycheck? So of course, an hourly rate is important, but if we're not talking about that, what are the other things that are really important to you? Are hours important? Is a bonus structure important? Is a 401k? Is, health insurance? Like, what are the most important pieces so that we can see if we can get creative with our benefit package to bring in better qualified candidates? And I know, Andres, you guys work with a 401k plan for your teams. I think
Mhm.
that's something where a lot of team members do not understand the value of a 401k, especially if you are doing a match or you are just contributing to it on their behalf, whether or not they are contributing themselves. So if you
Yeah.
offer a 401k, and you have not had somebody that does, the planning for you come in and teach the team what it looks like now, what it looks like later, especially if you have a team member that has had that grow with the practice, talking about what it looks like now compared to their first year. That is a really great topic for another team meeting as well, just so that your younger team members understand that maybe they're making $30 an hour, but with the 401k, it's really $35 an hour,
Right.
and that's going to benefit you down the road. Um,
Yep.
so having all of those pieces in place and knowing what's important to each team member is going to also just help you again in your performance reviews, putting your benefit package together and being able to find higher qualified candidates. I find
Excellent.
we're also going to share with you an annual compensation review sheet because, I don't know if this happens too, but my friend down the road that's a hygienist, she makes $4 more, than I make. So I want a raise at your practice. And we're not able to compare apples to apples. But when you are able to have the compensation sheet, it says, here's your hourly rate, but here's the vacation that I offer you, and here's the health insurance that I pay for you, and here's the 401k that we contribute, and all of the extra benefits. Well, maybe it's an extra, $15,000, $20,000 per year that they're getting. So you're able to break it down and show each team member that.
Super important. Yeah.
Yeah, it's super important. And even if you don't share the full thing with your employees, it's a great tool for you to be able to see what is it costing us and what are we able to do differently for better employee retention and engagement. We'll also send to you an employee perks menu. So this is where, again, if we can't always afford to increase salary, but we want employee retention and engagement, sometimes just offering small incentives and letting the employee pick what those incentives are. So if we know we could probably budget, $50 a month per employee, but instead of just giving them an extra $50 a month, what if we let them pick? Somebody, might choose $50 in gas cards each month. Somebody else might pick $50, in gift cards towards a spa. So you can have different ideas, different levels. If it's $50 a month, $100 a month, X amount per quarter. So when the practice is doing well, here's a way to share it with the team. But it's something fun and it's something different just to help with that employee retention. But overall, when you are looking for your next new hire, I really think the most important piece is knowing who you are as a practice, the vision, the core values, like who we are as a team, and being patient and finding the person that fits into that culture that has some potential and is competent, and we can train on the rest of the pieces. Because when we aren't patient and when we take the warm body and we throw them in and then we don't train them well, and then we say, I don't know, it's so hard to find great people, and it's just this vicious cycle. You should also always be looking for great, talented team members. Carry your business cards around with you when you are at a restaurant, any service industry, at the spa, getting your haircut. Anytime somebody is taking great care of you and they are just a great human, that's when you're like, hey, any interest in working in dentistry? One of my best hires came from a coffee shop, and we needed an assistant. And I loved going there every morning. Coffee wasn't actually that good, but we went every single morning because she was so awesome. And one day I said, you know what? I'm just going to ask her. And she's like, oh, I don't know. That sounds kind of fun, whatever. So she came in and interviewed, and we hired her. And she was a sterile tech, trained her up to be a surgical assistant. Then she went to hygiene school. Now she got accepted to dental school. So,
Awesome.
found this
What a great story. I love
great
that.
human that made kind of
Yes.
terrible coffee that is now going to be a dentist. And so you just never know where you're going to find amazing humans that you want to bring into the practice. And if you find somebody who is super talented, fits everything that you could want in an employee, even if you don't have room for them right now. I would carefully take a look at things and find a way to fit them into the practice so that you have them and make it work instead of waiting to say like, oh, now 6 months from now or a year from now when we need somebody and we can't find somebody. So just always, always be looking for amazing humans. And then when you find the amazing human, remember why you thought they were amazing and you give them every tool and every opportunity to shine and grow in the practice. And then every time you meet with them, because you're going to meet with them weekly, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and then every 90 days, you are documenting that, whether it's on a sheet that we send to you or letterhead. But it's just like your patient notes. You're documenting it. The employee signs it, you sign it, everybody gets a copy. It's dated, it goes into their employee file, and that is what keeps you safe if the great human turns out to not be a great employee at your practice. So we always want you thinking about the HR side of things and keeping you safe. So that's really, really the biggest pieces to hiring, onboarding, training is just having that structured piece so we know what we're training, when we're training it, and that we've given them the tools.
Excellent.
Yeah, and we'll send
Excellent.
all of these pieces to you so that you
Great.
can start formulating your own 90-day onboarding and training plan for your next great hire. And even if you aren't hiring right now, you probably will be in the next year, but use these tools on the team that you have in place. It's never too late to say, let's hit a pause and take everybody through that 90-day orientation training period. Make sure we're clear on our vision and core values. Make sure we're clear on the HR pieces. Make sure that they have their training. That's super helpful too.
Yeah.
Excellent.
We do have
Excellent.
additional resources on our website, ggpci.org. You can tell you a little bit more about our recruiting and onboarding program and HR work that Kim does as well. So you feel free to visit us there and reach out at any time. If ever you need to get a hold of us, we're always happy to answer any questions for you.
Excellent. Excellent. I'm probably going to have neck pain later because I kept nodding yes, like to everything you guys are saying. So I thought that was phenomenal. This is your chance, y'all. If you would like to ask a question, so unmute yourself. If you would like to ask Kim or Tiffany a question, this is your opportunity. After the presentation, we'll be emailing you the information that Kim and Tiffany are so nicely going to be sharing with you all, so you have all this. Some of these things, some of you may have heard before. I will say, because it's been brought up, but I appreciate you all. In the meantime, feel free to chime in, anyone who wants to ask a question. But a few things came to mind as I was listening to you all that really stuck with me. And they included hire for the journey, not the job. I love that. A job post is not a job description. I love that. Skills can be trained, personality cannot. I cannot emphasize that point more. You got to hire great people. And what you were just talking about, Kim, about you never know where you're going to find a great person. So if you encounter someone who's great, you should definitely be doing something in that regard. The other one is confirm what you are seeing in the interview process, i.e., call your references. So I can't say that enough. And then what there is, this is where hiring transitions to onboarding. So you got to remember, it's not just the hiring process you need to build out. You got to build out the onboarding process. And it's all about clarity, understanding the practices, culture, as you guys were talking about having the weekly check-ins, which I think is super important, especially in regards to leadership from the office manager and doctor's perspective. To have those check-ins with the team, I think is crucial. The soft skills with people, I think, is also super important. And then the HR side of things, we also prescribe to Bennett Erickson. So we're big proponents with them for HR manual and things like that. So excellent presentation. I appreciate you all so very much. Anyone have any questions? And we're going to tie things up here momentarily. I want to thank again Kim and Tiffany for being on board. Hold on one second. There I went. I disappeared for a second. Any questions? Anybody wanted to ask?
I actually
Dr.
do.
Godin. All right,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I've been trying to pop in and out. I'm about to go see another patient, but this has been
Yep.
great. So thank you for doing this. I actually, it's super relevant because I think I told Andres about this, that I recently met someone at the Apple store who helped me that was incredible. And actually had her come in just to kind of, she's never seen healthcare or dentistry, but just she came in just to kind of hang out. And she came out afterwards basically saying, like, this was great and really interesting. She's in school, so she's kind of looking for just something part-time. I honestly don't even have like a role that I'm hiring for, but it was kind of like, I love this person. Do you ever run into that where you're like, okay, I want to try to integrate this person into the fold, but I don't have like a specific position that I'm hiring for? I have kind of a really small office that I'm still trying to build in, like what roles I need as I grow. It's just like me and a scheduler and an assistant. And obviously I know there's in bigger offices they build in like treatment coordinators and all this other stuff. But what would you do with a person like that if it's like I don't have a specific role, but I kind of am interested in bringing someone on and trying to find out where they might fit in, type of thing?
Great question.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Are you general or specialist?
Specialist,
Specialist? Okay.
periodontist and prosthodontist.
Oh, fantastic. Perio is my passion.
Mine too.
Yeah. So fantastic, especially if you're a specialist and they're a great person. Do you have somebody that's already doing marketing for you and going out and meeting with the community?
We've been talking about that because we're trying to. We've been kind of doing it a little bit as a team when we have some time, but I don't have a dedicated person to that. No.
Part-time.
So if this person is really good with relationships, they don't really need to even know much about perio. They need to know about you and about
Okay.
your practice. And that's an easy like script to kind of start in training them. But if they can go and start building relationships with the dentists in your community, the other specialists in the community, I would probably utilize them for that. And then when they're
Okay.
not out, then just being a great concierge with patients and making the people that are bringing their, your patients and they're staying for procedures feeling comfortable. So just make things up for them to do, but I would utilize
Okay.
them as a marketing person,
Okay.
Excellent.
and just build
Yeah.
relationships for
And we
you.
know she knows tech, right? 'Cause she
Yeah.
does it.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Right. That's excellent.
Okay. No, I think that's a
Great
great
feedback.
idea. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah,
Fantastic. Any other questions, y'all? Before we go, again, I want to thank so much to have here on the call to have Kim and Tiffany take part. Let me make sure I have my little share screen here. But we want to let you know a couple slides over. Bear with me here, y'all.
Mhm.
And here we go. Our next webinar. So this was the inaugural. Thank you for coming to the E2E Dental Insights webinar. The next one is going to be on Friday, the 22nd at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And it's going to be Essential Leadership Skills for Practice Owners with Deborah Engelhardt Nash, who is an expert in the space. She is part of the Nash Institute and one of the top speakers and dental consultants. Who speaks about this, which I think is a fantastic topic for practices, not only owners, but also the office managers and practice managers to be involved on. So if you're interested, scan, put in your info. We'll make sure that you are on the calendar invite. And as I said, we will follow up with y'all with the information that Kim and Tiffany will be sharing. And again, hopefully you got their QR code. We'll make sure to share their information with you in the follow-up email should you reach out, because they are an excellent, and I can't say that enough, they are an excellent resource for y'all to take your practices next level, which I truly believe is going to be because of the team that you build and manage and nurture. So to Kim, Tiffany, thank you so much. To Marlena for being our organizer who put the whole thing together and dealt with my following up every 5 minutes. So appreciate y'all for taking part. I hope everyone has a great weekend. And we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar series or our next coaching call.
Thank you
Take
all
care,
so
y'all.
much.
Thank you guys. Have a great
Bye.
weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.